Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Thanks for coming. So let's talk a little bit about Maven, because I know when we say urban mobility, this is a big part of what you're doing at GM. And if I understand correctly, I mean, the difference between Maven and something like Uber and Lyft is that you, as the consumer, are actually driving. But so how does that fit into the overall landscape with Uber, with Lyft, with other ride-hailing as opposed to car-sharing services? What part of the market are you trying to fill?
So it's interesting. We actually, so Maven is the car-sharing business at General Motors. And you know, our mission is really to help reshape car ownership by connecting communities to cars through technology. And the easiest way to think about Maven is to think of it as a digital platform that comes to life as an app that is linking together people who need cars, either for business use or personal use, with cars that are available when people need them. And so our cars, the cars that are available, they can be used for people who want to drive for Uber and Lyft or for delivery services, right? Any kind of service that people want to use it for business but need a car and don't have. Or they can be used for personal use, which is the car sharing side of it, and if they want to run a longer errand, or if they want to go on vacation. And so we're really not, we're part of the, I would say we're part of the ecosystem of ride sharing, but providing cars to people who want to participate in that gig economy. And so that's how we're part of the ecosystem.
So there actually, a lot of them are the people that are delivering.
Absolutely.
Okay.
We have, I would say we have two main offerings. One is for what we call, and it's actually called Maven Gig. It is for the people who are trying to participate in the economy and want to drive, again, for all these services. And then we have another offering that's called Maven Car-Sharing, which is more for personal use.
And is that, I mean, is that for the same type of consumer who would use Zipcar, who would use something else, or what part of the market are you targeting?
On the personal side, it is, and on the business side, the difference is that the cars are ready to be driven in these services. Some of the services, like Uber and Lyft, have specific requirements for the vehicles to be able to be driven in them, and so it's a little bit different than other traditional car-sharing services. And so it's a mix of both.
When you say requirements, what do you mean exactly?
The cars need to be certified by Uber and Lyft, and they have to be in certain conditions, and the drivers need to have a certain insurance policy to drive them. So it's a little bit different. And another big difference between the services is usually on the ride-sharing side, a lot of the people are driving them on a weekly basis or even monthly, because that's their living. On the car-sharing side, a lot of people are actually driving them either by the hour or by the day, because it's just for short-term use. I think, honestly, Jen, I think the biggest and what makes it all fascinating is that the world is changing, right? The world of mobility is changing. The options that we have available to us are changing. And what it looked like 5 years ago was very different, and what it's going to look like 5 years from now, it's very different. And so I think it's all about options, people having more options. We are experimenting with this car-sharing world, but you have micro-mobility, which is another major trend in the space with, what we call the transportation in that last mile, right? So for short distances, how can you get there quicker? So bikes, scooters. So the options are just proliferating in a good way.
Yeah, so all of the above in terms of what you're looking at. Everyone's talking about autonomy, autonomous vehicles. How is that going to play a role in Maven's business, in GM's business? How is it already? Sort of where are we in the timeline of that technology from your perspective?
At GM, we really believe in a world that's going to be all electric and autonomous, and it's really part of the vision that was mentioned of, a world with zero crashes, zero emissions, and zero congestion. And autonomous vehicles are going to be a major driver of that. And so it's a journey towards this vision. We're not going to get there tomorrow, but it is what drives all of our business and what guides us. And so both electric vehicles, so adoption of electric vehicles is picking up. Autonomous vehicles are under development as we speak and making great progress. And then in the meantime, we have things that we put on the road today that are really stepping stones to that. So for example, we call them active safety features, like forward collision braking, where the car can detect that you're about to crash on another vehicle in front of you and actually automatically brakes. Or Super Cruise, which is our hands-free driving technology. These are all things that when we are ready to put them in market, we put them in market, but it's all towards getting us to, again, an all-electric and all-autonomous future. And I think if you stop to think about it, the power of what the world can look like when we get there, I think it's tremendous, right? Because from when we talk about zero crashes, when you stop to think about it, every year you have over 1 million people who get killed in traffic accidents around the world, and about 90% of those are by human error, right? So if you're at a point where you have technology that actually prevents these crashes, imagine how much safer the world can be, right? On the emission side, with electric vehicles, today in the US, cars and SUVs that are on the road today, they account for about 1/5 of US carbon emissions. So think of a world that will have only electric vehicles and how much cleaner that will be. Our CEO, Mary Barra, is always talking about how we're going to see in the next 5 years more transformation that we've seen in the last 50. And that is so true, certainly for our industry, but around the world, and it's all being fueled by technology, and so it's just very exciting times.
Yeah, so I mean, do you see in the next 5 years, will we reach that fully autonomous vision, or is it further away than that?
There will be stages of autonomous development, and it will start with pilots, right? And it will start with deployment in certain areas. And so it's going to take us a while to get to an all-electric and all-autonomous world, but certainly we're making great progress towards getting there.
I wanted to read you something that at our Fortune Global Forum last month in Paris, the acting CEO of Renault, Clotilde Delbos, said. She said, with regard to the way that autonomous vehicles and the way that people will share them, since you don't actually need a driver, she said, you're going to be using this car so much that the lifespan is going to be 2 to 3 years, not 7. You're going to need fewer cars, but you will need them more often. Do you agree? Are we gonna, will cars wear out faster because people aren't driving them? And what does that mean for GM? When you think of electric vehicles, one thing that people don't really know or aren't familiar with is that electric vehicles require a lot less maintenance, right? You don't need oil changes, for example, right? And so the life of the vehicle can really be extended because of that, right? So what it's going to mean is that people will be able to just use them a lot more often. And it's also because the trend is towards shared, right? That's the trend today, and there's no doubt that that's the future. It will be a much more efficient ecosystem of transportation. I also think that one of the really thinking about what autonomous can do for us in the future, one of the things that I think is really interesting is to think about how it's going to increase accessibility to people who today can't drive, right? So be it because of physical disabilities or because of age, and suddenly you don't need to be the driver, right? There's a technology that is going to take you where you need to go. And I think that's really powerful. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I want to come to the audience for questions in just a minute, so raise your hands, they'll bring you a paddle.
There's someone over there.
Someone over there. Okay, so they'll bring you a paddle, please, over here. And in the meantime, though, I just wanted to ask you something because we're always talking about electric cars, and the assumption is, I guess, that gas is expensive, and consumers are concerned about the environment, and so everyone wants to move to electric. And then here on the other side of that, you have this trend: people are buying pickup trucks, which seems to me kind of like the opposite of all these environmental concerns, and for maybe people are buying them because they actually like to drive them. How do you balance working towards what's good for the environment with giving consumers what they actually want?
I think the core here is to get to a point where people can choose any vehicle that they want that is electric, right? And we are clearly on that path. And so it's not going to be an issue because you are going to have electric pickups, right? And
Tesla Cybertruck, and maybe GM.
We'll have our own version of it. But I think this is really important to understand. People have preferences, and be it because of how they use it, so they need a pickup, right, because of the utility, or because that's just what they like to drive. And people should not be limited because it's electric. And so again, if you think about a future that is all electric, we're not going to have these kinds of things. In the meantime, we're working really, really hard to get best fuel economy that we can in the vehicles that are on the road today, including our pickups.
Thanks. Question over here, please, and please tell us who you are.
Hi, I'm Mo Dolan from Uber. So a question I have, as you're developing these initiatives and products and services, do you also consider what the infrastructure is necessary to support this? So how do you deal with cities, municipalities, sort of private entities to support charging, to support rideshare? Like, what do those services look like end to end? Is that something you do in-house?
Yeah, so a couple of things. One is the beauty of being an independent mobility unit within a bigger organization that is General Motors is that we have access to a lot of resources from, again, the bigger organization. And one of them is public policy, right? And so we have a very good team that we partner with at GM to help us with regulations, right? And municipalities to understand how we can work together, which is really, really important in our space, as you know. And I will also say that from an EV perspective, there's no doubt that there are things that need to be addressed for EV adoption to really become, predominant. And infrastructure is a huge challenge that there is, because that's the thing that is preventing a lot of people from buying an EV because they don't know where they're going to be able to charge the car. And so we are working very, very hard at GM to build out this infrastructure. We have recently announced a partnership with Bechtel on our intent to create a partnership that will actually allow us to build this infrastructure because we understand that is really critical. On the ride-sharing side, I will add to that we have our own fleet of Chevrolet Bolt EVs that are for gig drivers on the Maven platform. And it's really, really interesting. The drivers, the rideshare drivers, love to drive EV vehicles. They absolutely love it. They know that they tell us that the passengers love it. So it's something that's differentiated for them when they go and pick up someone. And the hesitation of how do I charge and where do I charge goes away once they understand where they can go. And so they map out their routes and they know where to go. We have seen, as you know from ride sharing, the mileage on the vehicles that these guys put is tremendous, right? They're driving all day long and doing several trips a day. And so with the Uber and Lyft drivers that are driving our EV vehicles, they've created so much demand that we at Maven have actually we've built together with EVgo, so we have a partnership with EVgo, and we've built 5 dedicated stations, Maven stations between LA and in LA and San Francisco, for a total of 34 dedicated chargers just for Maven EV rideshare drivers to utilize. And so I really believe that once the infrastructure is built, people are really going to, the hesitation will go away because it's very, very powerful.
Yeah, we only have a little bit of time left, but I wanted to ask you, because Maven announced in the spring that it was going to exit 8 of the 17 cities that it was in. Have you found, this is something that only works in certain cities, or what are you learning through the process about the markets that you want to be in?
It really is, and Maven, we're all about testing, learning, pivoting, right? Which is really part of the cultural mindset that we've created for this, what I call this mini startup within the big GM organization. And we've learned that, with the limited resources that we have, the growth potential isn't there in every market, right? And so we really needed to focus, make sure that we focused where it made sense and where we saw the most growth potential. And that's what we've done in this last year.
Mm-hmm. So certain bigger cities seem to be better. Well, great. Thank you so much, Sigal, for being here.
Sure. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Thank you.